start with the floods. Sydney has been deluged these past 3 days, 6 inches and more across most of the Sydney Basin and much more up into the Blue Mountains and elsewhere. More than 200 mils or 8 inches in the Old Money in many, many locations. It's been bucketing down in the northern beaches this afternoon. Have a look at this vision a mate of mine sent from his place at Seaforth. Just torrents there, and of course terrible for the people living down the end of that street. Little wonder then that down in the low-lying parts of the Manly Peninsula and further north along the beaches, the flooding is severe. Just stunning scenes this afternoon, dangerous flash flooding. And the situation is still unfolding. 2,000 people were told to evacuate because the Manly Dam was overflowing. And there you can see the Roseville Bridge. People stuck in floodwaters on a bridge. Can you believe? Now, there's strife right across the Sydney Basin. There were 2 more deaths today, this time in Sydney's western suburbs. And this comes as the clean-up continues and the dangerous and heartbreaking clean-up task is happening in southern Queensland, of course, and in northern New South Wales. And this recovery effort is happening even, of course, as more rain is forecast for those parts of the country too. It's horrible work for local residents and, of course, those who have gone in to help them. But there's no alternative. The only other option is to give up and walk away. Now, I'll check in on all of this tonight, the ongoing troubles and threats, as well as what's needed in the recovery. In fact, why don't we just take a live picture now, satellite picture of the rainfall situation off the Sydney area. And you can see with Sydney about in the middle of that picture, you can see that system pushing most of the heavy rain further south now. So what's hit Sydney this afternoon is not over, but the epicentre of it all is shifting along the south coast. So all of this is by its very nature imperfect, isn't it? So dealing with these threats. It shouldn't need saying, but natural disasters and their aftermath are by their very nature chaotic. And the same factors, in this case, floods and rains, the same factors that cause the damage hamper the rescues and the recovery. Some of these floods, Lismore for starters, have been the highest they've ever had. Others, closer to Sydney, come just a year after the last inundation. So this is all tough, right? We get that. It's very tough. A lot of people muck in. Everyone helps out their neighbours. Even Mick Fanning and Pat Rafter, millionaire sporting legends, they just got in, got dirty and helped their mates. They helped strangers as well. They helped their compatriots. That's the Aussie way. That's the only way to get through a natural disaster. There isn't a fire truck outside every house, an SES crew for every block or a military helicopter for every farm. There just isn't, and there never will be, especially at the height of the crisis. But that doesn't stop some people in politics and the media trying to make all this the government's fault. Scott Morrison's fault, can you believe? It's pretty stupid, it's pretty ignorant, and it's pretty divisive. Have a look at a Labor MP in northern New South Wales who sets up a shot to make sure there are no soldiers in his shot to make this point.
But the one thing you won't see behind me is anyone from the federal government. There's no Army personnel helping with this clean-up. I want to pay tribute to the Army personnel who are here, but there's just not enough of them. We need Army here helping with the private contractors to do the clearing. We've seen Scott Morrison go missing before when it came to the bushfires. He can't do it again. Currently, Scott Morrison is MIA. We need him to pick up the phone and get resources here straight away. We know he didn't hold a hose. He can at least hold a phone. He can get resources here helping people today.
I mean, really, what a hero. If he wanted to pay tribute to the Army, he could have done that and set up his camera shot with the Army working behind him. They were probably just around the corner. Better still, he might have mucked in himself. In Sydney, Christina Keneally was very keen to tell viewers that she was sitting in a new place that she set up in Liverpool now because she's running for the seat of Fowler in Western Sydney. She also seemed to see this natural disaster as manna from political heaven.
Where we have right now a crisis unfolding that is threatening the safety and the security of Australians in their own homes and businesses, and the Morrison-Joyce government once again has gone missing.
It's pretty ugly stuff, isn't it? There are extraordinary amounts of rain, flooding that would create chaos anywhere, anytime, and there are individuals looking after themselves, neighbours helping each other out, emergency services stretched to the limit, volunteer organisations too. Then there are local governments and there are state governments, and the Defence Forces have been called in as the crisis continues, but apparently Canberra is at fault. Have a listen to this.
Are you embarrassed that ordinary Australians are having to do so much work in this? Ordinary Australians are having to get themselves to remote areas in their dinghies, wading through floodwaters to help people, to take them food and to make sure they're all right.
No, Koshy, I mean, that's the Australian spirit. That's what you and I would do for our neighbours. And
absolutely.
It's what people do
we
in
want
extremis.
the ADF to do that for us as well.
I'm not embarrassed by that. And the ADF is doing it.
How could you be embarrassed about the people Koshy calls ordinary Australians? I'd call them Australians, mainstream Australians. How could you be embarrassed about them helping their neighbours or helping strangers? How else would you get through a natural disaster? Sit back and wait for the police or the SCS or the military to turn up? Don't you want them to concentrate on those who can't help themselves? Do you really think there could be enough trained rescuers to help everyone? This is just silly, but it's what we've come to expect. In fact, the New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet has been unnecessarily contrite, I think, after the way politicians, activists and media targeted Scott Morrison over the bushfires. He wants to be on the scene, apologising even for people feeling isolated. Look, it is tough out there, but governments can't make natural disasters easy. There was one unquestionable mistake made by the New South Wales authorities, and it was really about telling people not to help out.
We were obviously, there was advice being provided for people to not take matters into their own hands. But from what I saw over the course of the week, had they not, had neighbours not got into boats, then I believe the death toll would have been much higher.
Yeah, I think that's right. If people had actually followed that advice, we'd have a lot more people dead, right?
Well, that's pretty clear to me.
Yeah, it's madness to tell people not to help. In natural disasters, it's all hands on deck. But not for the opposition politicians or for the media. In their eyes, it's all about adding to the drama and blaming what was always going to be an immensely difficult situation on the federal government, which, by the way, happens to be the level of government least responsible for planning decisions, flood mitigation and emergency services. Go figure. These people are so partisan, so hateful, they cannot see fellow Australians in hardship. They can only see political opportunity. Take the so-called independent candidate Allegra Spender, one of the millionaire-funded Green Left so-called voices of candidates. She tweeted that 3 years ago there were historic drought, 2 years ago historic bushfires and now historic floods. And she then whinged about the coalition's emissions targets. So she links to her climate argument drought, fires and floods, all of which we've always had and always will have, all of which we've had worse instances of in the past, allowing for some records, of course, such as Lismore's flood level. And she seems to be pretending that climate policies, emissions reductions by Australia can fix this. This is logically, rationally, factually absurd. Nothing Spender or the other Green Left candidates propose will alter our climate a jot or protect Australians from natural disasters in the future. Even the former chief scientist has admitted that Australia's emissions reductions can't change the climate. So what's the point of holding out false hope on this stuff and doing it at the very time that some people are battling to save their possessions and even their lives? Well, it's cheap and ugly politics, isn't it? They want to win votes on the back of the personal suffering of others in a natural disaster. Adam Bandt, the Greens leader, actually said this could have been avoided, and the Liberals are supercharging climate disasters with coal and gas projects. This is as crazy as it is disgraceful. Bandt must know this is scientifically absurd. But that's how the Greens operate. And to see just how insane some of this partisan bile has become, have a look at another one of those so-called independents. Georgia Steele says Scott Morrison botched the bushfire response, botched quarantine, botched vaccine supplies, botched the subs, religious discrimination, climate, botched the Integrity Commission, and making Parliament House safe for women. And on top of that, he botched the flood response too. I mean, why not blame him for Warney's death too? And maybe for my hair loss? You would think they're going too hard, wouldn't you? You would think that they're overplaying their politics and that most people will see through it. I mean, you can't scream global warming and our rivers are going to run dry and our dams will never fill one minute and then scream floods are the new norm the next, can you? But they do. But can they get away with it? These partisan, personal blame games at the height of a national natural disaster are really dumb and really ugly politics. But sadly, that doesn't mean they can't work.